Hello and welcome. This video is a commentary on the first chapter of Modern Man in Search of a Soul by Carl Jung. If you haven't listened to my narration of said chapter, I would suggest doing so, as everything I say here relies upon that chapter. If, for whatever reason, you just hate the sound of my voice, you can always listen to other narrators, or get a physical copy or read it online. The first thing I'll say is that a person can do a lot of damage trying to assign psychic significance to dreams that really mean very little at all. I'll go as far as to say that most dreams you have don't mean anything. Typically, they are forgotten mere minutes after you wake up. Of course, if you really wanted to remember them, you could keep a dream journal. But if you aren't particularly troubled by your nocturnal imaginations, chances are you will cause yourself more stress trying to decipher some inane drivel than unlocking the secret to your psyche. There are also the cases of dreams that do carry some psychic significance, but are also easily understood and really don't need any change of course in order to resolve themselves. So let's take an example of a typical stress dream that a lot of people have. You have a big day at work tomorrow, and the night before you have bad dreams about being naked or something like that, or making a fool of yourself. It's not really hard to understand that you're scared of failure. Well, you just go out and do your job, and it resolves itself. You don't need to decipher anything. You don't really need to do anything about this dream. So I say all of this most likely to the chagrin of Jung, who would respond with something like, "Those dreams seem meaningless because I'm too ignorant to understand." But even he would recognize this sentiment is not much of a practical rule, but rather a guiding principle. No one really believes that every single dream you have has psychic significance, but we should act as if they do, because the cost of ignoring such dream that does herald oncoming psychic dangers is extremely high. So now we have to ask, well, what is the difference exactly from a dream that means nothing and a dream that means everything? And I think a good answer to that question is, well, which dreams actually emotionally and physically affect you? Those dreams that affect your emotional and physical state are the ones that have a lot of importance. They are the ones where your body, your mind is telling you that something is off and something needs to change. The dreams where you wake up and your heart's pumping with fear, your hands are sweating with anxiety. There's also the cases of dreams where they're happy and they're positive, and you have to wonder, what about these dreams made me feel a certain way? And I find the dreams that are positive, oftentimes they bring with them some form of sadness, because it's something in your life that you've lost, and you were remembering the good times that you had with that someone or something that is now gone. And in the case of negative dreams, where's the fear and anxiety coming from? What's causing these negative feelings to occur? And oftentimes I find that the answer to this question, especially in the form of negative dreams, that answer is something that you really don't want to hear. It's something that you don't want to do, because if you wanted to do it, then you wouldn't be having a dream like this, because as Jung says in this chapter, that dreams are counterbalances to your conscious state, and that you know what you need to do, but it's an answer that you don't want to hear, so you push it off and you suppress it and you get it away from you, because this thing that your body, your mind, your unconscious, whatever you want to say, is telling you to do is so antithetical to who you think you are, you can't even fathom actually following through with it. So taking an example from the book about this that illustrates this point is the dream where the man misses his train and the train wrecks. So the dream analysis is basically saying that this man is working too hard. He can't keep up with the demands that he's putting upon himself. And that is the last thing an ambitious businessman wants to hear. This guy, he's pulled himself up from the dregs of society. He was born as a peasant, and He's now at a place where he can finally see the finish line. And now he's supposed to believe that he's just supposed to give up, that he's going to stop when he's gotten so far. And I'm sure when Jung told him this interpretation of his dream, all that guy could think about was all the people that ever said that he was never going to do anything with his life. All the people that saw him as nothing more than the station from which he was born. And all of the slights and all of the indignities that he had to face coming from people who thought that they were better than him. And now he's supposed to believe that his own mind himself is telling him that they were always right and that he is essentially a fraud. Of course, he's going to reject this interpretation, even though it is correct, because he's not going to believe that he's not strong enough to give it his all. People who are ambitious and people who are underdogs, which by all accounts this guy was both, they tend to manufacture enemies when there are none. And that even extends to themselves. He focused on the crash. He focused on the crash being a failure and the crash being a complete and utter disgrace to everything that he's worked for. And it's natural to see that as an insult because it's his hard work, his ambition, his drive that's gotten him to where he is. So why should he stop now? And with this way of thinking, it's really easy to get a pair of blinders on where you're so focused on one particular thing, you couldn't see it from another point of view. Especially when you're scared of the answer that could come from looking at it from another point of view. But you've got to understand that when you're having things like this, when you're having physiological effects, when you're having psychological effects from your actions, that you need to stop and think about why you're doing the things that you're doing. The thing was, he was pushing himself too hard. And you can say diamonds from coal all you want, but human beings aren't rocks. It's not that he was too weak to do the job, but rather that he was trying to do too many things at one time. If you think back to the dream, it's not that the train has a problem with starting or going anywhere, but rather that it's just going too fast, and he doesn't see that there are limitations to the track he's on. See, the track's already there. He has the ability. He has all the ability in the world, but he just can't go too fast. But to this guy, maybe slowing down felt like giving up because he had been going full throttle for so long, and he couldn't imagine any other way of being. So that's when his psyche steps in and tells him that he needs to do something different. And he ignored these warnings at his own peril. And as the chapter explained to us, he eventually had a psychic break from that. So oftentimes when you have these dreams, you'll know why you feel the way that you do. You're just scared to admit it. But you don't need to be scared to admit it. You need to dive in there and really understand who you are and what you need to do and where you need to go. Another aspect of dream analysis that I don't think was really touched upon in this chapter was the fact that when you go and you talk to a psychiatrist about these dreams, or even if you go and write down these dreams in your dream journal or wherever you have them, or you tell them to a friend, or however you want to express these dreams, you're not actually expressing a single dream, especially if it is of psychic importance, because when you have dreams of psychic importance, they will be reoccurring dreams, because the reason why you're having them, again, is because they are a counterbalance to something that you're not doing in your conscious life. So as long as you don't address why you're having the dreams will continue to happen. So when you express these dreams to yourself or even another person, you are recollecting all the commonalities across every possible iteration of this dream. So going back to the example of the train wreck, let's take a hypothetical situation where the guy starts at his hometown and then misses his train from his hometown. Or maybe one time, instead of being a cobblestone road, it was a straw road. Each of these little differences may mean something in particular, but on the whole, they are not that important for the actual meaning, the actual meat of the dream. So when you are retelling this dream, you leave out those things and instead supplant them with only the parts that are important to this particular dream. Not only that, you can also have different dreams who are completely different in setting and character, but still mean the same thing. The most obvious example of this would be the young woman with muscular atrophy. She had multiple dreams involving the death of something, but in the two dreams that Jung reports to us, it is the mother and the horse, and he goes in great length describing the mythological connotations to both of those images. So if you're troubled by a particular dream, I would also look towards any other dreams that you are also having that have a similar effect, because chances are they are in some way related, even though your conscious mind is unable to make the connections between the two. That's why it's so important to always go into something like this with an open mind, because it is fundamentally beyond your conscious comprehension. If you had the capacity to fully understand the predicament in which you find yourself in, your unconscious would not have the need to present you with these uncomfortable occurrences, whether they be dreams, unpleasant feelings that seem to come out of the blue, or even physiological happenings such as altitude sickness or another form of physical ailment. There's no neatly packaged solution to any of these problems, and you need to be open-minded in your endeavors to solve them. You're not going to find the solution to your issues in some self-help book or a fitness guru or anything like that, because they aren't you. The only person that can fix you is you. And to go outside of yourself to try and find something to fix whatever you're having wrong is just an easy way out. It is a diversion from the task at hand. I once had a friend who was unhappy with his position in life. And it wasn't that anything was really wrong. I mean, he had a good job. He had a decent family. He had everything that you could be content with. But the problem was he didn't feel fulfilled in his life. And so his solution to that was to simply move on to a different physical geographic place in the world. But that's not going to help anything with what's actually wrong, because it is not the world around us that breathes life into us, but rather we are what breathes life into the world. And if the life within you is unfulfilling, then no matter where you go, the world around you will always be dead, because you are dead. Dogmatically following some principle set up by another person will never help you. You can always look to what has worked for other people for help, but ultimately, it must be you that solves the problem. I also think this is why Jung is so vehemently against trying to set up a comprehensive theory of dreams, because he realizes that his purpose is not to set up some scientific principle, but rather to help people in need. Everyone is so drastically different from everybody else, to the point that if you try to create this theory of dreams, then it will only work for one person, and it will work for no one else. So then the only answer is to throw out theory entirely and simply work with the people that you meet. And for people who are not psychologists, the answer is not to seek meaning in ideas, but rather to utilize these ideas and to utilize knowledge to discover what is meaningful to you. Now, this is not to say that there are an infinite number of truths, but rather it is dangerous to be so enraptured by a single idea or ideal that you become possessed by that ideal and you fail to become your own person. And instead of fixing your issues, you cover them up in a veil of jargon and pseudo-religious symbolism. I think that's about all I have to say on this chapter. Thank you for listening to my ramblings, and I hope they've been at least somewhat entertaining. And I also hope that you have a good day. Goodbye.